Good morning, learners. Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Very good morning. Now I will start.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I will discuss today about Barlow's irony that he has taken in his plays. Dramatic irony. First, we will see the nature and definition of irony. The new Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary explains irony as the amusing or strange aspect of a situation that is very different from what you expect. Irony is a form of wit in which the opposite to what one really means is said. In comparison to satire, irony is less direct, but no less effective than satire. It is not easy to define irony exactly, but we can begin from some other dictionary. The expression one's meaning, the expression of one's meaning by language of opposite or different tendency, especially the adoption of author's view or tone, is called irony. Generally, irony is often expressed by a tone of voice. The words, for example, she is a fine example of a faithful wife. And it can be spoken, giving stress on she and giving stress on fine. And naturally, it is the duty of a wife to be faithful. And simply we can take an example. But why fine has been added into it? Fine is added into it because to give importance, stress on the example and the person, she, who is faithful to her husband, the second person. And this is the irony we have put into the sentence. In such a way as to mean exactly the opposite of what they seem to mean. In conventional English, an ironical interaction or ironical intention of somebody while narrating or addressing somebody, some other fellow, becomes clear from the context. If a historian were to write the result of this wise and statesmanlike decision, was one of the most destructive wars in European history. It would be clear that wise and statesmanlike, when we give a statement, in order to judge its importance, in order to give stress or emphasis to that particular sentence, particular saying, we have to add some adjectives, better you say, in order to enhance or highlight the quality of the fellow about whom we are discussing or we are telling, and also about the incident and happening, occurrence. It would be clear that wise and statesmanlike, the decision is always a decision, and to give importance to that particular decision, whoever may take a decision or in which circumstances. And when we add some adjective to glorify or to enhance the importance of the decision, we add wise and statesmanlike decision, which is used ironically. This is the irony. Jonathan Swift, 1667 to 1745, was one of the great masters of irony. He has used irony with all the satirist weapons in his ability to amuse and entertain the reader. Then comes dramatic irony. Irony in general and irony used in a drama. Dramatic irony is an interesting and intermediary factor between the subjectively held irony of experience on the part of the dramatist and the objectively found ironies of the world. Always a dramatist tries to draw the irony from the present society. And by taking the examples of irony from his society during the period in which he used to produce a drama or write a drama, he used to add some more irony according to the subject, according to the topic he has chosen for the play. Whether the plot or the story taken from some ancient literature or written with the help of some old legend or theory or scripture, the playwright must have to look after the ironies used in that old scripture or old legend or old writings. And accordingly, he uses irony in his play. Dramatic irony refers to the possibilities of a multivocal or a privileged reading as against a popular reading of a play that is not available to the character and at times to the playwright himself. Accordingly, Renaissance dramas favor irony or an ironic reading by virtue of its transitional experience. Because during the development of Renaissance in Europe, the society, the life of the public, the scenario, the political happenings, religious propaganda or religious activities, all and everything started changing in a modernized way. Invention of printing machines, establishment of industries, development of lifestyle, and also accordingly, there is a great change in politics also, as well as religion. In such a transitional period, in such a changing atmosphere, literature was also changed. The style of writing of the dramatists, poets, essayists also somehow changed according to the trend. And with this change, the plays of Renaissance, the plays written during the time of Renaissance and also staged accordingly, also bears the ironic views, ironic statements, dialogues, for the entertainment of the public. And in order to bring a change, we have to use some particular way, particular technique, and particular words to be used in literature, by which you can make a transformation. And the writers are greatly responsible to bring transformation or change in a society through their powerful writings. And the writings must influence the people or the readers to have a change. Change in their lifestyle, change in their attitude, change in other aspects of life. We may call it religion, we may call it politics, we may call it some other aspects of life, public relation, etc. This particular term, irony, was given literary or given literary sophistication, first introduced by Frederick Selzer, Friedrichschlegel. The sophisticated literary irony, the term and the technique practically was invented by Frederick Selzer in the 19th century. Before it, of course, there was irony, but it was in the form of satire. In Greek dramas, in Germany, in France, in Italy, we find in their literature satire. Satire was there in ancient times, but irony was inside that satire. It was not independent. Independently, it started and used in literature, and the literary sophistication was launched by Frederick Selzer in the 19th century. He liberated the term from satire and the simple verbal raillery, Raillery. Raillery means the friendly joking about a person, verbally, not included in the literature. To explain the paradoxes in Shakespeare's dialogues in his plays, we also find the use of irony. But it was presented in the form of satire. And on Selzer's understanding, a critic named Bert O. States, BERT, capital O dot STATES. Bert O. States speaks of Selzer's understanding that irony, you may note it down, irony was the highest principle of art. Irony was the highest principle of art, and the poet stands ironically above his creation. The poet stands ironically above his creation, as God does above his own, semicolon, the creation is utterly objective in character. The creation is utterly objective in character, and yet it reveals the subjective wisdom, and yet it reveals the subjective wisdom, will and love of the Creator. Will and love of the Creator. According to the love of God, will of God. The subjective wisdom is revealed. Hyphen. Like God, he always expresses the less that he thinks. The less that he thinks. End of the quotation. And why? What says like this? Because according to the religious propaganda, according to the religious belief, basically what we find in Christianity, that God thinks more but does less. God thinks more to do a lot of things for this world, but he does something less or somehow less. Likewise, a creator like God, a dramatist or a poet or an essayist, the creator always thinks more but produces less or expresses less. While producing mechanism of the dramatic action, and regarding the dramatic irony, again Botto states, defines, comma, inverted comma starts, by irony, comma, in its widest context. In its widest context, comma, I do not refer to that negativity. I don't refer to that negativity of attitude we associate with common irony, comma, but rather to the very principle of negation itself. Inverted commas. He wants to say that the common irony we use verbally while talking to a friend, talking to a relative. Sometimes, ironically, we want to change his behavior. We want to change his attitude. We want to change his mood. Verbally, we use irony. And that type of irony should not be placed in literature. And the playwright or the poet or the essayist, they should be more serious and follow the principle of use of irony in literature. To make it more fruitful. Regarding the placement of irony in literature, in the plays by the great playwright, world famous dramatist Sir William Shakespeare, he has used irony in his tragic play Hamlet. And regarding this use of irony in Hamlet, what opines, inverted comma starts, Hamlet, the play, is ironic in the first sense. Hamlet as a play is ironic in the first sense, comma, Shakespeare creating Hamlet, the character. Shakespeare creating Hamlet, the character Hamlet is ironic in the second. First, he makes the play ironical. Use of irony in the subject. Use of irony in the play, in the dialogues. And secondly, then after he thinks about the irony which can be used in characters. This is another important factor of dramatic irony. Hyphen. Irony is the dramatist's version irony is the dramatist's version of the negative proposition. Of the negative proposition. First up, it helps him to avoid error. It helps the playwright to avoid error, comma. That means it widens his vision. It widens his vision and allows him to see more. Full stop. In short, comma, the complete dramatist, hyphen, if there is such a person, if there is such a person, the perfect dramatist, better to say, like Shakespeare and Marlowe. If there is such a person, hyphen, is unironically ironic. Unironically ironic. Inverted commas. So these statements of Bott gives us a broad idea about the use of irony in a play. He used to say that first irony should be in the subject. The dramatist must have to put irony first in his story. And secondly, it will be reflected in the characters, in the dialogues. The thought of irony before writing a play should come to the mind of the playwright. And when he mentally prepares himself to put irony in his play, in the second phase, he will think of the situation, think of the act or scene in which circumstances he will use irony in the dialogues of the characters. He must have to study the gravity of the situation in which he will use irony. After taking a brief idea about irony and its background, now we will switch over to Marlowe, the Elizabethan playwright, in which age he used to write was a time of Reformation, age of Renaissance, and changes were everywhere. in the society, in the art, in literature, in religion, and also in politics. In politics, we find the mixture or cooperation and correlation of two branches of Christianity into one. It was the Elizabethan policy. In politics, at the first stage, when she was enthroned, when she came to power in the early part of her rule. Who wanted to bring a good relation between the two branches, two sectors of Christianity, the Catholics and the Protestants. And as a player, as a dramatist or playwright of Elizabethan era, Marlowe faced the task of intellectual and artistic correction of these things. The correction Elizabeth made in her administration, in politics, in order to have a new trend in English society, to re-establish a new type of administration. Because she knew without the cooperation of all branches of people, all trades of people in England, the administration or the politics cannot run well. And the impact of Elizabethan style of administration or politics was seen everywhere, in culture as well as in literature. And Marlowe, in such a period, such a social background, he desired for artistic correction by taking the ancient stories. He wrote plays to make it stage fit for the English public. He had no more the world of artistic. He had no more the world of established truth to live in a world of correction, live in a world of transition or reformation or so-called the Renaissance. But rather, one of the half-truths developed by his time. People in general couldn't be able to accommodate with a complete change. Some of the people are traditional people, because we find different types of people live in a society. Some conservatives were also there who didn't want to give up their old habits, old practices of English life. But most of the people, they wanted change. And in such a transitional period, complete truth to live in was impossible to be established in a society whose impact was on literature. So, Marlowe wanted to take a half-truth, which was developed by his time in the English society. He also wanted to take up half-truth in his, or while developing his plays. There was also strong disagreement between the Catholics and the Protestants within the Christian faith, and for which Queen Elizabeth had to bring a law, bring a new act in order to have an agreement between Catholics and Protestants. We have already discussed about that while discussing about the Elizabethan period, history of Elizabethan age. Now, Marlowe, as a scholar of vast learning, unlike many of his contemporaries like Shakespeare, John Lilly, or Ben Jonson, wouldn't help a critical and even a skeptical attitude towards both the dogmatic and the resurgent ideas of the time. Dogmatic means what I have already told. The traditional people, conservative people, English people, who were not in a mood to give up their old practices. Skepticism represented the intellectual acumen and rigor of the Elizabethan mind was there, and Marlowe's intellectual predecessors are the Latinist Erasmus and the great writer Thomas More. The book of Praises of Folly, written at Thomas More's house, sums up the ironic perspective necessity for the cultural experience of the times. And also, the placement of irony is also found in the writings of Erasmus. Irony as a self-defending human presumption, self-defeating human presumption was the structure of medieval miracle and morality plays. And Marlowe follows the dramatic form of these plays, medieval miracle and morality plays. But the point of Marlowe's irony is a dilemma on the part of man to understand it completely. And which dilemma we find in his Dr. Faustus. The tragic play written by Marlowe in a new form and new style, taking the incident or the story from ancient Germany. Because of why? Only because there were some traditional and conservatives in English society having some old pattern of thought. So in order to draw their attention for their entertainment, he added a dilemma. And which was not possible in part of the youngsters to understand why Marlowe has put dilemma in the characters of Dr. Faustus. Straightway, he would have put the character as a negative character, or the character of the protagonist following the path of religion, or keep faith on God. So why he stands in the middle of the way in a condition of dilemma, whether he will choose the path to hell or go back to heaven to get the mercy of God. And this dilemma was used by Marlowe only for the traditional and conservative peoples of England. And also, some of the characters in public life were in such a condition, like that of Dr. Faustus. Neither they were in a mood to condition to leave the old practices, nor they are mentally prepared to adopt the new modernization or modern life. And in such a condition, according to the situation, Marlowe wanted to put dilemma in order to show the practical mentality of the English people during Renaissance, during Reformation. All that he confidently feels about himself is simply a presumption, assumption he has taken up while writing Dr. Faustus, and mentally he was prepared to highlight Christianity or the religion. If somebody will take the path other than religion, other than God, other than heaven, he will be punished. It was a threatening to the common people. Through his writings, he wanted to establish the theory that there is no way, good way, to be established in human life other than God, other than the path of religion. Without the help of religion, one cannot attain salvation, like Dr. Faustus. And this particular, to eradicate the dilemma in the mind of the English people during Elizabethan period, perhaps Marlowe has added dilemma in the play. And this dilemma is greatly responsible to establish irony in the life of Dr. Faustus. The ironical characterization of Dr. Faustus was very largely accepted by the traditional English people, because they were the blind followers of religion. They were the blind followers of God. According to their thought, nothing is possible in this world without the mercy of Jesus Christ. The essential irony formed in the miracle and morality plays paves way to the Marlovian irony that makes the human dilemma poignantly tragic. When there is dilemma, there is tragedy. When we become indecisive, we are punished, or we face the consequence, we face the problem. One must have to take a perfect decision. It may be good or bad, but that decision must be carried out perfectly. If he is in dilemma, can he go forward or can he go backward? He will remain standstill and face the consequence or failure in his life. And due to this dilemma, irony is created. He is treated ironically by the society. The irony in Dr. Faustus is confused by the fact that Marlowe nowhere articulated either his religious convictions or his humanist yearnings. Directly, Marlowe has not told anywhere that God is great. Christianism is great. Without Christianity, man cannot survive. Without God, the mercy of God, man cannot progress or live a life in this mortal world. He has not directly, anywhere in his play, he has not established this thing, this theory. But indirectly, he was a religious bent of mind, a true Christian, and also he had much regard to the administration, to the politics, to the queen, to the government, and also for which he was engaged as a statesman, or better to say, he was a spy of the government. He was acting as a spy of the government, and for which perhaps he was killed at an early age. There may be some critics also opine that Marlowe had two types of enemies. One political, another is your professional. Professional means there were some people who could not appreciate the writings of Marlowe, who was a staunch Christian and always tried his best to establish Christianity and the presence of God in his writings. The modernists, they thought that he was writing for conservatives or traditional people. The traditional people thought that he was writing for moderates or modern people, young people. And that was also a dilemma created in the life and the associated society around Marlowe. It might be the another cause of his murder. Whatever it may be, he was a great playwright. And through his irony in his plays, he has tried his best to correct the English society. He tried his best to establish good against evil, and also the use of muscle power might is right. Another type of his writings, another type of drama, to achieve success through wisdom or to achieve success through muscle power. Achieve power with the help of muscle power is another aspect of his writing that is found in Cumberland. And thus the irony in Dr. Faustus is confused by the fact that Marlowe nowhere articulated either his religious convictions or his humanist yearnings, and Marlowe suffered a schism within his mind in regard to the values of Christian faith against the emergent humanist values. Humanist values or humanism, modern humanism, had some value in a modern society. But Marlowe, in order to pay regards to that humanist values, tried his best with his Christian faith. Thus, Marlowe is deeply sensitive to the raging intellectual and religious controversies of his time. It is difficult to assess Marlowe's specific persuasions, his atheism, which was polemical. based on strong arguments. Involved with the religion, religious passions, but is found with Dr. Faustus on his death. And also, according to some critics, the death of Dr. Faustus and as his soul is taken away by the evil spirits. It was criticized by some of the critics that Marlowe betrays religion. He couldn't or he didn't establish the greatness of God. Only he has given the threatening to the people like Dr. Faustus to give up the way of hell and to adopt the way to heaven in the path shown by God or Jesus Christ. Likewise, the Marlowean irony has to be credited to his dramatic genius that could evaluate all kinds of experience with an unfailing objectivity as he presents in Dr. Faustus the two distinct structures of irony, one based on the theoretical concept and theological concept of sin, sin and damnation, and the other on the self-limiting structures of human possibilities. Because human beings, while living on earth, has some limitations. In a right way. And man must not travel or run or go on the forbidden path. Forbidden path, that is path to hell. Thus, Marlowe's specific dramatic achievement lies not only in making one irony intelligible in terms of another, but also in using them in such a manner that one highlights the other, which is proved not only in Dr. Faustus, but also in Camberland and other places. This proves that Marlowe was a playwright and as an ironist, he is a successful dramatist. Now we will see, we will find what type of irony he has used in Dr. Faustus. Irony in the play, Dr. Faustus, gives us a broad idea about Marlowe's thought of iron, scheme of iron, dramatic iron metals. Having trained the delicate irony of human condition, Dr. Foster's the play presents a course of regenerative irony. The new form of irony on the old stage. The theological formulation of sin could never be further than human truism, and the greater the man desires to be, the less he becomes. And for which a great critic, Douglas Cole, Douglascole, Douglas Cole opines, inverted comma starts, note it down. Dr. Foster's is a man. Dr. Foster's is a man who, of his own conscious willfulness, brings tragedy, invites tragedy, invites tragedy and torment, crashing down upon his head. CRASHING, crashing down upon his head, comma. The pitiful and fearful victim of his own ambitious and desires, of his own ambitions and desires. Full stop. The irony with which Marlowe habitually invests in the downfall of his protagonist, is here wrought to its highest and sharpest point. Semicolon. It is an irony. It is an irony based on theological concepts of sin and damnation, comma, and dramatically expressed in two major patterns of action. Hyphen. The repetitive pattern of moral choice, leading to the alternative of spiritual destruction, and the pattern of contrast between Hostess's grand imagination or imaginative designs, and the actual virtuous or sensitive accomplishments. Virtuous means sensitive. Accomplishments of his magical career. Inverted commas. Of his magical career. Virtuous accomplishments of his magical Question. Dr. Faustus's fatalistic interpretation of the scriptural assertion ironically becomes a matter of his self-consciousness or self-conscious choice, and his willful choice becomes a repetitive pattern of continual willfulness in the face of an agony, in the face of an agony or agonizing awareness that the God he rejects, in one hand, he continued to cherish. For him, the necromantic books are heavenly. The magician he wants to be is a mighty God. According to his conception, the magic books or necromantic books he was reading were heavenly for him. And the magician he wants to be is a mighty God. He wants to be a God in a wrong way. Make himself a God in a negative way. He rebels against God, but the divine consciousness characterizes even his rebellion. God always continues to be the measure of all things for Faustus. He always thinks of God and also takes it granted that God will never provide mercy to him because he has denounced God. The irony lies there. The irony in the dialogues, in the life, and in the play itself. The irony of Dr. Faustus' revolt doesn't end with its divine awareness. Lucifer and Mephistopheles, two of his evil friends, to whom Foster quotes, share the ironic predicament with these characters. Rejecting the God, but cherishing him. In his professional life, he rejects God. But mentally, he needs the help of God. That is the conflict, dilemma, and irony in his life. Mephistopheles describes Lucifer's revolt against God as not heroic, but as one of the pride and insolence, and hell is the absence of heavenly joy and everlasting bliss. And hell is the absence of heavenly joy and everlasting bliss. Faustus himself looks upon his own revolt of desperate thoughts revolt of desperate thoughts against God as securing eternal death. When he accepts his eternal death with the force of the evil spirits, the desperate thought of God comes to his mind. There is no such enduring irony as the dramatic character in the dramatic character of Dr. Faustus as observed by some critics. Enduring irony. There is no such enduring irony. Some critics opine that irony was there in the life of Faustus, but they do not approve the dramatic irony in the play. Irony builds up the character of Faustus and the play so forcefully that the greater the revolt of Faustus is against God, greater still is his divine awareness. The more he denounces God, the more he becomes closer to God. And thus, irony not only beats off the paradox of Dr. Faustus' revolt, but also through the paradox intensifies Faustus' self-awareness and his sense of human condition. The tragic dilemma which comes in Faustus' life doesn't rest in his choice between God and devil, but rather in their inseparable coexistence within his human condition. Always in his mind, there is the presence of God. But he is misguided by the evil spirits to choose a path of hell. God is the heavenly joy of human limitations, and the devil is the appetite or desire to gain something in backdoor policy overnight. Is the human aspiration. Because man knows he will die one day, and the time of the lifespan of his in this world, his lifespan is very short. So always he wants to achieve something more during this short span of life. And when one desires to achieve more, he must have to find some shortcut way. And that shortcut way is the magical way, or through magic, through devilish activities. He can acquire more wealth, he can acquire more power, he can acquire more sensual pleasure within a very short time by following a wrong path. And which has been the motto of the modern man or ultra-modern man in this ultra-modern age. So also and so forth. The writers are moved, they are impressed, motivated to produce something, to write something, to enact a play on the stage according to the choice of the audience. And the choice of the audience differs from age to age. And accordingly, the writers in the same age, they desire to design their plays, design their dramas as per the choice and demand of the public. But there are some plays, immortal plays, better we say, of Marlowe or Shakespeare, or some Greek, German and French, Italian plays, which have value and popularity, even in the ultra-modern days, after some centuries. So, we can conclude the thing that Marlowe, as a playwright of Elizabethan era during Renaissance, has created a masterpiece that is also appreciated by his own people in his age, and which has value and teachings, moral teachings for the modern man to be adorned in the even in the ultra-modern age. So, thus, irony in Dr. Faustus's story or in the play of Marlowe stands as a landmark in the history of ironical plays and pave way to the modern writers. And as the dilemma plays a vital role in Dr. Faustus, we can throw light on the particular word, particular term, dilemma with tragic irony, that is found in Dr. Faustus. There is a dreadful irony pervading Dr. Faustus, the play. And this irony operates at the verbal level. In Act 1, we see when Faustus first summons Mephistopheles, it is to discover that his words have no compelling power, that the devil come of his own accord, And Mephistopheles informs Faustus that when the devils hear a human being ready to renounce the scriptures and the religion and his Savior Jesus Christ, they fly to him and in hope to get his glorious soul. In the beginning of the play, we find that Mephistopheles, an agent of hell, ambassador of an evil spirit, he tries to motivate Dr. Faustus when Dr. Faustus intends to choose the path of magic in the preliminary stage. Because he was a physician, famous physician, having reputation in the society, and he was a learned man, highly educated, but he wanted to gain more and to be a god, powerful and wealthy like a god, and which was not possible in a right path. So he decided to choose the wrong path, that is the path of magic. With the help of magic, he can achieve success. So Mephistopheles declares that it is not his fault. It is their work that if somebody chooses the path of hell, they will help him. And here we find Faustus's rapturous speech at the appearance of Helen through magic is sought through with ironic meanings not intended by Faustus, reminding us that his vision is an illusion and evil spirit. That is illusion, that is not practical. He was meeting Helen. Or the magic shows he has exhibited, he was practiced in the court of some kings, some rulers, in the royal courts. All those things were illusions. He could able to create a situation through black magic by which one can feel the presence of somebody, some past life or events mentally in his imagination. Faustus desires to attain a splendid world of unlimited possibilities, but his choice takes him or commits him to a limited, inescapable destiny. The last soliloquy of Dr. Faustus seems to concentrate and sums up all that the play has already resolved and revealed the truth that choosing a wrong path is inviting the end. Here, Faustus's desperation is expressed with a powerful urgency, and it is clothed in imagery which both contracts and extends the dimensions of time and space. And Faustus' sufferings and his suffocating sense of being imprisoned in his study, the study of magic. The sensations ironically intensified by the nearness of eternity and infinity. The speech of Dr. Faustus is a form of prayer or a magical spell to suspend the inevitable passing of time, to open up the farthest recesses of heaven and earth. He comes to repent at the end of the drama. His last soliloquy is an admission of the possibility of divine grace and forgiveness. Ironically, the realization comes at a time when the devil is around to torture him to death. And if he could be stopped, he would gain the grace of God, mercy of God, and the divine forgiveness. Faustus knew that the possibility of repentance and forgiveness waited on him until he reached his end. He loses all opportunities of God's mercy and invites his degradation and destruction. Christian theology proved itself forcefully in Faustus' predicament when he seeks God's mercy. It points out a didactic religious phenomena, whereas Marlowe brings out irony and tragic dilemma. Dilemma is created in the mind of Faustus when at last he cannot decide what to do, whether to seek the mercy of God or go to hell. Faustus' predicament falls short of a tragedy, or he was motivated by nothing but presumption, which could have been easily remedied by repentance, and consequently he could have been rescued by the divine forgiveness by God. But Marlowe, to give more respect to religion, forces his protagonist to go to hell, being deprived of the mercy of God. What happened to Faustus may justify Christian theology, but what it explains creates irony for man. Hence, the irony in Dr. Faustus' career is his tragic dilemma. They are correlated in this play, irony and dilemma. The dilemma that has been created in the mind of Dr. Faustus brings irony or invites irony in his life. And that brings the end of his life. Thus, as a whole, irony and dilemma is placed side by side in order to make it the play more interesting, alluring, and accepted by the English public. Now, we will go to see the acts, scenes of the play. A brief reading can be made on the play. Follows Dr. Foster's. And when we will go to see the play, examine the play act-wise, in the beginning we find when the curtain raises, the chorus introduces the theme of the play. We have discussed earlier that how chorus plays a vital role in the medieval plays. And also the train continues for some more days. And when we find, when the curtain raises, a group of people in a chorus introduce the theme of the play. We know that Marlowe has not put any battle or war or any murder in this play. But the magical atmosphere he has created in the play through the dialogues of the characters has made the play more interesting. This play deals with Faustus's fortunes, good or bad. Faustus, we are told, was born in Germany. Previously, we have discussed. Belonged to a very low family. And he was brought up by his relatives. And he grew up to be a great scholar, acquiring extensive knowledge in the field of divinity and theology. Being a scholar, how he was motivated to take up the path of hell. But becoming too proud of his knowledge and learning, he tried to be powerful and rich. His motto brings his downfall, brings his disaster, and he takes up the study of necromancy and tries to build up his career as a magician. To take up the career of a magician is something different. But with the help of magic, one should not acquire power or wealth or sensual satisfaction or seek the salvation of his soul through magic is a wrong way of choosing a profession. The speech of the chorus acquaints us with the intellectual achievements of Faustus and his fatal choice of the subject to read magic. And symbolically, Marlowe has put a character, Icarus, and his flight into the sky with waxen wings is significant. It represents self-destructive aspiration and is symbolic of Dr. Faustus's career. His choice of necromancy in preference to his soul's salvation is clearly deliberate, and which we find in the opening of the play in Act 1. There was no outside force compelling him to take up the path of magic, but his inner healing. In the dialogue, we mark it, nothing so sweet as magic is to him, which he prefers before his chiefest bliss. Faustus is shown in his study, examining various fields of learning in order to decide upon his choice of the particular field in which to specialize. He is attracted by analytics of logic, but finds that he has already attained great proficiency in it. And he wants to learn more and more and to acquire some more through the new study. He has taken up study of medicine, and also he was successful in that field. He was also widely recognized as a physician. But still then, he was ambitious, over-ambitious, better we say, and which was totally unsatisfactory for him. The study of magic makes a great appeal to him. Magic will bring him not only wealth, but power and glory. Magic will enable him to extend his authority as far as the mind of man can go. In imagination, he tried to fly over the sky and declare himself as a god. And then in the Act 1, we find the appearance of the good angel who asked Faustus not to read the book of magic, but to study the scriptures. And by the by, also appear the evil angel who encourages Faustus to study magic and to become a powerful person on earth as God in the heaven. Leaving divinity to God, Faustus dedicates himself to the devil, to the devilish activities, rejecting the fatalism of doctrine. Say, say, sera, sera, S-E-R-A, S-E-R. What will be, shall be. That means, what I shall do, I shall be. He performs an act of his own will, and it is one of the acute ironies of the play, that what he wishes to be, he shall be. That he chooses the devil and damnation, and he goes in the end to the devil. He desires to take the help of devils, and at last he is killed by the devils. This superficial glory by which Faustus rejects the scriptures and divinity is in itself deeply ironic in his character and career. In Act 2, Faustus is alone in his study. He is faced with an acute mental uncertainty. Mephistopheles now appears and tells Faustus that Lucifer has agreed to buy Faustus' soul on conditions already fixed by Faustus. And Mephistopheles, however, wants Faustus to sign a bond with his blood. Faustus taps his arm and begins to write the bond in his own blood. But the very next moment, his blood freezes and he cannot write no more. He can write no more. And Mephistopheles immediately tries to liquidate his blood with the help of a fireplace or burning charcoal. And thus Mephistopheles helps Faustus to sign the bond to sell his soul for 24 years to Lucifer. This is dramatically a most important scene. Here, Faustus signs the crucial bond. However, before he signs the bond, Faustus experiences a mental conflict, which clearly shows that his conscience is in either deal and his mind is not dead or asleep. Being fully conscious, he has taken up the decision and still dilemma in his mind. He couldn't able to decide whether he will turn to God, seek his patronage, or he will go to seek shelter in the hell. And here in Act 2 also, we find the appearance of the good angel and the evil angel. And which grows mental conflict in the mind of Faustus. Inner conflict is a very important element in Dr. Faustus, as it plays a vital role in all great tragedies. And this inner conflict constitutes a principal ingredient of this play. And the appearance of good angels and evil angels, greatly responsible, create dilemma in the mind of the protagonist. Also in Act 2, Faustus is once again shown to us experiencing a mental conflict when he thinks of heaven. He repents of his contract with the devil and curses Mephistopheles, whom he blames for having instigated him to choose the path of evil. He wants to renounce magic and repent for his sins. But the good angel also motivates him to do so. But in the next moment, we find the evil angel make yet another appearance, pulling Faustus in opposite directions to not to seek the path of religion, way to heaven. Also, there is a conflict in the mind of Faustus when he asks Mephistopheles to tell him who made the world, in whose direction the world is moving on. Mephistopheles refuses to answer this question, whereupon Faustus feels greatly annoyed with him. But at last, Mephistopheles reminds Faustus that being already damned, he must think only of hell, not of heaven. This act begins with the quarrel between Faustus and Mephistopheles and ends with a reconciliation between him and the devil. Always he is motivated by the evil spirits. In Act 3, the chorus and the speeches, the dialogues of Faustus shows us that Faustus has been learning the secrets of astronomy by studying the clouds, the planets, the stars, tropic zones, and the movement in the sky. Faustus ascended to the top of the Olympus mountain. He has traveled to make his investigation into cosmography, science, the science of establishment or construction of the universe. He is now about to arrive in Rome to see the Pope and his Pope. Faustus, here we find, has not forgotten his scholarly ideals, but has been making full use of his magic power to master the secrets of astronomy and cosmography. Faustus has been making a first-hand study of the planets and the stars, and that helps him to create spirituality in his mind. Act 4. In Act 4, also in the opening, we find the chorus tells us that after his journey to various places, including the royal courts of kings, Faustus returns home, where he is cordially received by his friends and nearest companions, his fellow scholars, who feel greatly impressed by his accounts of what he has seen and by his learned answers to their questions. Faustus' fame has now spread to every land. He has given magic performance at various places in the court of emperors, even Charles V being one of them. Here also in Act 4, we find the comic scenes the comical activities by Robin and Osler, two characters. Who wants to steal away the magic books of Dr. Faustus? And they both of them want to be magicians. And when they are seen or found drinking at a wine bar and have stolen a silver wine cup according to their habit, likewise, they want to take away the magic books of Faustus, and they are followed by the owner of the bar and accused of theft. Also in the Act 4, we find Faustus showing his magic power in Emperor's palace at Innsbruck. The Emperor has had Faustus's great reputation as a magician and as a successor of Alexander the Great of Greece. He wants to see the soul of Alexander and his beloved. And also Faustus becomes successful and orders Mephistopheles to bring Alexander and Thais, the souls of Alexander and Thais, to the court of the emperor. The emperor is wonderstruck to see them, invisible souls. Only he could able to feel their presence and remarks that surely they are no spirits, but the two substantial bodies of those two deceased princes. After the spirits are gone, Faustus requests the emperor to call for the knight who opposed him doing so. And also some fun and comic mixture of dialogues and happenings found in the Act 4, Scene 3. And also there appears a horse dealer with whom Faustus has a quarrel of a bargain of $50 to purchase the horse. And also in the Scene 5 of Act 4, we find Faustus's presence in the court of the Duke of Hainault and the Duchess of Hainault, who was pregnant during those days, wants to eat grapes, though it was a terrible winter and grapes were not available in their land. But Faustus orders Mephistopheles to go to Asia or some hot countries to collect grapes for the Duchess of Hainault. And the Duke and the Duchess are impressed with the activities, with the magic of Dr. Faustus, And due to the establishment of these three comic scenes, of course, Marlowe was criticized by some critics, but perhaps Marlowe was forced to do so to add some these three magical scenes, magical comic scenes for the entertainment of the people, traditional people, conservative people, for the Elizabethan audience, to fulfill the expectations, to provide full entertainment to the traditional Elizabethan audience. In the Act 5, the last part, we find Faustus's end is approaching. And he has already given up all his good doings. Given up even hope for his life. Faustus appears with the three scholars and Mephistopheles. And when we find that some of his scholars demand to see Helen, the peerless dame of Greece, whom all the world admires for majesty. Faustus agrees to summon Helen through his magic. And some of his scholars may be able to see her. At last, we find the appearance of an old man who scolds Faustus for his wicked and sinful way of life and for his alliance with the devil. He urges Faustus to seek the mercy of God, Jesus Christ, whose blood at the time of death, a drop of blood, must wash away all his guilt, all his wrongdoings, all his sin. Faustus feels overwhelmed by the sense of the sin and rebukes himself for having signed the bond and repents for it, that he has pledged his soul to the devil. So being disgusted, it is found in the last act. Mephistopheles gives a dagger to Faustus to kill himself. But the old man stops him from committing suicide. And again, he tells the Faustus to seek the mercy of God, to appeal God for mercy. But Faustus finds it impossible, as there was Mephistopheles, Lucifer, who didn't allow Faustus to seek the mercy of God. In the next scene of Act 5, we find the appearance of the old man again. And accuses Faustus that he has not heard his advice, and again continued the practice of necromancy, and thus excluded the grace of heaven from his soul. The devils appear and again persuades Faustus to suicide, kill himself. In scene 3 of Act 5, we find Faustus is now seen in the company of scholars. He is feeling miserable, and on being asked by the scholars what ails him, he says that he committed a sin for which he will never be pardoned by God. Through the wonders he has created in his lifetime, lost everything. He has lost everything now and going to die very soon. And the end of his life is calling him. And you will live in hell forever, because he renounced God and renounced his presence, his mercy. When he tries to weep, the tears are taken away by the devils, by the evil spirits. When he lifted his hand to pray to God, the devils holds his hands. And now he waits for his end. The clock strikes half an hour to be the 12 or midnight, when the devils have fixed up the time of death, and they will carry the soul of Faustus forever. Mephistopheles appears, and Faustus utters a scream of terror. Then the time comes. The clock strikes 12. The devils then take away Faustus' soul to the hell forever. This shows the tragic end of Dr. Faustus. At last, the speech of the chorus contains the moral of the play. Faustus is gone, says the chorus. Regard his hellish fall, falling upon the wise people only to wonder at unlawful things and not to practice necromancy. This play is practically a morality play, and the speech of the chorus represents the features of a morality play. And it must, however, be observed that the play would have been better without this moral being tagged onto it. And also the religious establishment of religious faith. Establishment of religious faith also plays a vital role in the play. That's all about Christopher Marlowe, the tragic end of Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe is Dr. Faustus. And the play is regarded as one of the best plays of Marlowe, or as the Elizabethan plays, with full of tragedy and some humor, full of irony and establishment of satire, The play is a successful drama ever produced in the Elizabethan period. That's all. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.